After learning of Japan's surrender the day before, just as dawn was breaking, Wu Xinrong got out of bed. He brought out the ancestral tablets that had been hidden away in an air raid shelter. Wu first lit incense for his ancestors, and went out to meet friends. In his diary entry for that day, he wrote, "My friends and I took off our clothes, and jumped into the stream, washing away 10 years of war dust, and 50 years of bitterness. Upon getting ashore, each of us shouted toward the sea. From today on, we are beginning a new life." Wu, a scholar-physician, graduated from Tokyo Imperial Medical College, and worked at Jiuli Hospital in Tainan. He had the habit of keeping a diary. From 1933 to 1967, for more than 30 years, he wrote every day of his life down, without interruption. Manuscripts at the Taiwan Historical Materials Center show that Wu began to write his diary, in Japanese from January 1, 1938. Nearly 8 years passed after that, and Wu came to realize that he no longer needed to use Japanese. He finally picked up Chinese to express his feelings again. The date was August 16, 1945. 3 centuries of legacy, from lingering Qin customs to the imprint of Japan, have been completely eradicated by this war. If a new culture can emerge from this damaged soil, we should take the responsibility to achieve it.
"34年10月25号，日本代表在台北中山堂签字投降，由我国收回。"
On November 21, 1945, less than a month after Taiwan's restoration, the Minbao newspaper headlined, "The establishment of a Mandarin training class." Within half a day, more than 4,000 people had registered.
Heaven and earth, dark and yellow. The universe, vast and primordial.
Beyond the ubiquitous Mandarin classes, private schools teaching Chinese classics gradually reopened. Anyone able to speak in Mandarin quickly became the envy of others. New and old Mandarin textbooks emerged on the market. Songs popular on the mainland during the War of Resistance now echoed on Taiwan streets.
The first song we learned was the national anthem, March of the Volunteers. A university student taught us, and a female student played the organ. So we sang along. Since we didn't know how to pronounce the words, he wrote them on the blackboard using Japanese kana, and we copied them down.
That autumn, 17-year-old Zhang Kehui ended his life as a youth soldier and returned home to Zhanghua. Before Mandarin teachers had even arrived, Zhang Kehui borrowed a Mandarin booklet from a classmate and began teaching himself. In Nantou, Zhang Qinglong attended the Linzi branch of Fengmei Public School, 1 li from home. After August 15, 1945, 12-year-old Zhang Qinglong read 3-character classic for the first time.
At the time, the Japanese teachers were gradually leaving. Those who remained were Taiwanese teachers. Most of them spoke Hokkien. So at first, they taught the students 3-character classic from the restoration in October to November. Classes were suspended every afternoon. Teachers were sent for training in what was called The Beijing speech. They trained in the afternoons and taught us the next morning.
Alongside the surge in Mandarin learning, on October 10, 1945, the first Chinese newspaper after Japan's surrender, Minbao, was founded. On the Restoration Day, Chinese papers, such as Vanguard, Political and Economic News, and Minsheng also began publication. This ended the island's Japanese-only reading culture. After restoration, the land was unchanged, but many things had changed. Among all those changes, the language issue was the most serious and far-reaching. In an article published on October 22, Taiwanese writer Yang Yunping stated, "We must reclaim our language." Jishan Rock lies on Taipei's outskirts, amid greenery. It has been a place for study since the Qing dynasty. In July 1895, Izawa Shuji, the new head of education of the Taiwan Governor-General's office, arrived at Jishan Rock to inspect the site. Pleased with the site's quiet surroundings, Izawa Shuji made a decision on the spot. Days later, the sounds of teaching Japanese echoed in the Wenchang Pavilion of the temple. Huiji Temple was renamed the Jishan Rock Academy. On October 19, 1895, the first 7 students graduated from the academy after studying Japanese. When the Japanese arrived in Taiwan in the summer of 1895, Japanese was still called the Japanese language. But within just 1 year, the colonial authorities had designated Japanese as the national language. By 1896, the Japanese colonial government had established 16 Japanese language centers and 18 branch schools across Taiwan for Taiwanese children.
The Japanese police went around saying, "Send your children to our school. If they come to our school, we'll give them 10 cents a day." 10 cents a day. Let me ask you a question. Do you know how much a police officer earned between 1895 and 1900? 3 yen a month. That worked out to about 10 cents a day. People made it a joke, saying, "A Japanese policeman only makes 3 yen a month." So they said, "Let's try it. Send the eldest child to school." And he came home with 10 cents.
Liu Dongzhou was Hakka. He was born in 1934 in Jiudong, Hsinchu.
Our family was relatively well off. This small car was the only one on Jiudong Street. This is the oldest photo. My grandfather, my grandmother, and this is my father.
The Liu family was prosperous. His father ran a Maruzen shop, selling Japanese goods. From an early age, Liu Dongzhou attended school with Japanese children.
For quite a period. Since I was a kid, I could not speak Hakka, and I could not speak Hokkien. All that I could speak and understand was only Japanese. I hadn't realized I was Taiwanese. My great-grandfather worked as a secretary at the Hsinchu County office. My grandfather hated the Japanese. He never spoke or understood Japanese. When I talked to my father had to translate.
The Taiwan Textbook Library holds many editions of textbooks printed during the colonization. In 1898, the Governor General's office issued the Public School Ordinance. Japanese language schools and language centers were reorganized into public schools. Modern colonial education, centered on spreading Japanese, began in Taiwan. For nearly half a century, the Japanese colonial authorities imposed Japanese language education on Taiwan.
What Japan schemed was to reshape the national character of the people it ruled. And it began with language. That is why language is so fundamental.
In the early period of Japanese rule, Japanese was promoted, but Chinese was still allowed to be taught. After the war broke out nationwide, as Japan entered a wartime system at home, a Kominka campaign, enforcing imperial loyalty and erasing Chinese culture, was imposed by Japan, widely on Taiwan.
They did so in order to turn the Taiwanese people into what the colonizers called true Japanese, and make them loyal to the Tenno. So they must intensify the spread of Japanese across Taiwan. They believed that language use led people to absorb the culture behind it. So compulsory education of Japanese was a core part of the Kominka campaign. It promoted Japanese and imposed a ban on Chinese thoroughly. The Taiwanese people could not speak Chinese or write Chinese at all. Everything had to be in Japanese.
At that time, after arriving at the school, we had to speak Japanese. We were not allowed to speak Hokkien. If you didn't speak Japanese, you would be punished.
During the Kominka campaign, Japanese language centers set up by colonial education authorities spread across Taiwan. Japanese language contests and related events, which designated Japanese as the national language, became routine. Families that used Japanese and passed inspection were issued a plaque reading National Language Household to hang at their doors.
Everyone had to speak Japanese. There were rules requiring the whole family to use Japanese. The local office issued a sign that said National Language Household. Once it was hung at the door. You could not speak Hokkien. You had to speak Japanese. The benefit of being a national language household was that you got better rations and higher quality supplies. You could receive more pork. You could receive more fish.
If you were recognized as a national language household, first, you could get larger rations. By then, it was late in the war, and supplies were scarce. But you might get enough this way. Second, your children could attend Japanese schools.
Mr. Li Fu, after Taiwan is recovered, there will naturally be much to be done. But in my view, the most important task is education. In May 1944, following the founding of Taiwan Investigation Committee, Chen Yi wrote a letter to Chen Lifu, Minister of Education. He described the harms of Japan's colonial education in Taiwan, and pointed out its essentially enslaving nature. In the year before the war ended, statistics from the Governor General's office showed that the penetration of Japanese in Taiwan has reached 70.6%.
You know pinyin, right? We had never read it, out with our mouths. We could not speak the Beijing speech at all. How could we? We had never even heard it.
Everything was in Japanese, from first grade through high school, and even university, it was all Japanese. So, to tell the truth, after Japan surrendered, I did not know Chinese, so everything I wrote was in Japanese.
Right before Japan's defeat, a newspaper reported that among Taiwanese over 30, only a few out of every 100 had even a basic ability to recognize and understand written Chinese characters. Those under 30 essentially had no real ability to read Chinese characters. Those under 20 did not understand Chinese characters, not even the basics. For them, in daily use, Japanese was actually the most convenient language.
Chen Yi, newly appointed as Governor General of Taiwan, arrived in Taiwan. He had studied in Japan for a decade, and spoke fluent Japanese. Yet at this time, he refused to speak Japanese. When speaking with the public, he required Japanese, or Hokkien interpreters to be present. Chen clearly understood that Taiwan needed cultural reconstruction. And it had to begin with the full promotion of Chinese.
Language and writing represent culture and shape how people think. Only through language and writing could Chinese culture, Chinese ways of thinking, and Chinese ethical values be brought back to Taiwan after 50 years of colonial rule.
6 million people, with almost burning enthusiasm, began learning spoken and written Chinese. Taiwanese writer Wu Zhuoyou wrote in his book that those who knew Chinese volunteered as teachers in Chinese language centers to teach people Chinese free of charge. In the memories of Japanese journalist Ito Kinjiro, many people set up blackboards on the street. At the time, anyone who knew Chinese, whether standard or not, would quickly be surrounded by eager learners.
The Chinese learning craze was chaotic. People arriving from the mainland spoke with accents from every region. But everyone believed that learning Chinese meant having a future.
The textbooks in use were all over the place. People knew Taiwan had been restored and returned to China, and felt they should learn Chinese. Much of it was spontaneous, driven from the ground up.
The intense but disordered surge in Chinese learning left Chen with mixed feelings. Standardization was required. Chen raised the issue again. He wanted to recruit a leading expert to standardize the language education. Who would that be? Wei Jiangong, majored in Chinese at Peking University, was a pioneer of modern Chinese linguistics. After 1940, he worked for the Ministry of Education's Mandarin Promotion Committee. After the Taiwan Investigation Committee's founding, Wei was appointed as a part-time specialist commissioner. He participated in planning the takeover of Taiwan. After the war ended, the 44-year-old Wei had planned to return to Beiping. One transfer order changed his plans. Wei Jiangong arrived in Taiwan. He brought the phonetic symbol system, Mandarin teaching records, and standardized methods for Mandarin pronunciation. On April 2, 1946, the Mandarin Promotion Committee was established. At that time in Taiwan, Roughly 1 in every 10 households owned a radio. Starting May 1, 1946, at 7 o'clock every morning, people could hear a Mandarin pronunciation model. Read aloud in a Beijing accent. Driven by the Mandarin Promotion Committee, model pronunciation broadcasts, Mandarin textbooks, and various Mandarin training centers were rolled out rapidly and in an organized manner across Taiwan. But with Mandarin education expanding on such a scale, where would the teachers come from? On February 12, 1946, 10 days after the Lunar New Year, the Xiamen municipal government in Fujian province received a telegram. There is an urgent need for Mandarin teachers in national primary schools, and plans are made to recruit 240 bilingual candidates from southern Fujian fluent in Mandarin and Hokkien. Printed on page 3 of Xiamen's Jiangxing News on February 27, 1946, the notice was easy to overlook. The 22-year-old Lin Liang never saw the announcement. The youth daily in Xiamen, where he worked, had recently shut down. He needed to find a new job. A friend told him about recruitment for Mandarin promotion officers. Lin quickly applied.
They were recruiting Mandarin promotion officers. The requirements were very simple. First, you had to have taught primary school, so you understood teaching. Second, you had to speak Hokkien, since Hokkien is almost the same as the dialect spoken in Taipei. I happened to meet both conditions. I had taught primary school, and I spoke Hokkien.
In the spring of 1946, more than 90 teachers from Xiamen went to Taiwan. Over 30 of them went ahead as Mandarin promotion officers. Lin was among them. After a short period of language training, Lin and the others who had been recruited landed in Taiwan via Kaohsiung.
My father had already passed away by then. My mother was firmly opposed to the idea. She said not to go so far away, and that I could find other jobs. But I told her I had already given my word. I could not back out. So, when I left, she was very upset.
That early summer, at Keelung Harbor in northern Taiwan, Gong Shumian and her classmates also set foot on the island.
We boarded a Taiwan-registered ship at Min River in Fuzhou. We left in the morning and stayed on the ship all day. We arrived in Keelung the next morning. The ship rocked violently the whole way. I vomited non-stop. It was extremely hard. If I had known it would be like that, I would not have come.
Keelung in July was muggy by the sea. Gong felt uneasy, unsure of what fate was awaiting her. Gong Shumian was born in 1924 in Chuanzhou, Fujian. In 1946, she graduated from the National First Overseas Chinese Normal School.
When I was in junior high, I did not even know Taiwan existed. You might not believe it, but we had no such concept back then. We only knew about Southeast Asia, places like the Philippines and Singapore. Then suddenly, a place called Taiwan came up. They said Taiwan needed many primary school teachers. and asked us from the normal school to go and help for a while. That photo was taken after I arrived in Taiwan around my first year of university.
Gong Shumian still vividly remembers the day she arrived in Taiwan. Initially, she was assigned to teach at a primary school. What she did not know at the time was that her cousin, Gong Shuqi, had been appointed chief secretary of the Mandarin Promotion Committee. He was traveling with Wei Jiangong and others along the Yangtze River route, heading for Taiwan. Only days later, a sudden piece of news filled Gong Shumian with grief.
It was like a bolt from the blue. I did not know how to cope. I could only ask the professors who'd brought my cousin how he had fallen into the water. They said he was nearsighted, mistook the pontoon planks, stepped into empty space, and fell into the water. It happened in a place called Mianyang in Hubei province, along the Yangtze River.
Because of her cousin's accidental death, Gong came to know Wei Jiangong. With Wei's help, she began to study education at Taiwan Normal College, teaching by day while continuing her studies. Taiwan Normal College is today's Taiwan Normal University. By September 1946, more than 1,000 young people from the Chinese mainland had been selected to teach in Taiwan. Many of them, like Gong Shumian, eventually settled there permanently. As a Mandarin promotion officer, Shaman native Lin Liang's first assignment in Taiwan was to compile a reference book comparing Mandarin and Hokkien pronunciations.
This book recorded where Mandarin and Hokkien pronunciations were the same and where they differed. For example, the Mandarin word for eye is pronounced wo. In spoken Hokkien in Taiwan, it is pronounced gua. We set them side by side to compare how they were pronounced, so the differences would be easy to see. That was my first job.
Taiwanese dialects primarily refer to Hokkien, Hakka, and the languages of indigenous peoples spoken in Taiwan. During the Mingqing period, many Fujian and Guangdong people migrated to Taiwan. Most came from southern Fujian.
The ancestral roots of most Taiwanese can be traced back to Fujian, with particularly strong roots in the Minnan areas, such as Quanzhou and Zhangzhou. Among Taiwan's dialects, Hokkien is the dominant one, with the largest number of speakers. Hakka is spoken by a smaller group.
Freshly restored. Although Taiwan could not shed the influence of Japanese culture, local dialects gradually moved from the home into public spaces. Wei Jiangong proposed, starting with local dialects such as Hokkien and Hakka, comparing their sounds with Mandarin, to accelerate the promotion of Mandarin.
In my view, Mr. Wei Jiangong was truly remarkable. Promoting Mandarin on such a large scale was never going to be easy. One of Wei's guiding ideas was to start with local speech. He wanted Taiwanese people to first relearn their dialects. By dialects, he meant Hokkien, Hakka, and Cantonese. Whether dialects or Mandarin, they all belong to the same Chinese language family. The difference lies in pronunciation. The logic behind the language and its overall structure are the same. Using dialects as a bridge into Mandarin was the most effective approach to achieve the goal.
Jifu. To rebuild public morale in Taiwan, we plan to set up an institution to publish books and newspapers. Please come to lead it. And reply by telegram. This photograph was taken in Tokyo in 1904. Standing behind Chen Yi, Lu Xuan is on the right, and Xu Shouchang is on the left. Xu Shouchang, or Xu Jifu, was born in Shaoxing. In September 1902, he went to Japan to study. He met Chen Yi and Lu Xuan at fellow provincials' gatherings, and the three formed a deep bond. After returning to China, Xu Shouchang focused on education. He was a special commissioner on the Examination Yuan Selection Committee of the national government.
Chen repeatedly invited Xu to Taiwan. They were classmates and fellow provincials educated in Japan. They understood each other. Chen believed Xu was very suitable.
Beyond their personal ties, Xu's experience in Japan was also crucial. At that time, Taiwan was deeply Japanized. Assimilation had gone very far. If you did not understand Japanese or Japanese culture and lacked a certain level of familiarity with it, you could not carry out cultural reconstruction.
The Lu Xuan Memorial Museum in Shaoxing preserves a 1938 edition of the complete works of Lu Xuan. This collection, compiled jointly by Xu Shouchang and Tsai Yuanpei, received generous financial support from Chen Yi, who was then chairman of the Fujian provincial government. Ten years later, when faced with Chen's invitation, the linguist Xu Shouchang hesitated before agreeing. Throughout the War of Resistance, Xu moved repeatedly with the universities where he taught, enduring years of upheaval. By early 1946, he had just returned to Nanjing. He had been separated from his family for 9 years in a row. But after brief hesitation, Xu Shouchang agreed to go to Taiwan.
Xu Shiwei recalled that her father, Xu Shouchang, told the family that the political atmosphere in Nanjing made him uncomfortable. He also hoped to complete a biography of Lu Xuan and a biography of Tsai Yuanpei. At the time, Taiwan was relatively stable, so he hoped to go there and use that stability to fulfill his wish.
On June 25, 1946, Xu Shouchang boarded a ship bound for Keelung. Carrying only a single suitcase, he arrived in Taiwan alone. I am delighted that you came to work in Taiwan. After 51 years of Japanese rule, Taiwan differs sharply from other provinces. And the greatest challenge is psychological reconstruction, starting with language and writing. This work is meaningful for Taiwan and for the nation as a whole. I hope you will devote 5 years to completing it. On August 7, 1946, the Institute for Compilation and Translation officially announced its establishment. Xu Shouchang was appointed its director. Chen Yi hoped the institute would become a model for rebuilding Chinese culture in post-war Taiwan.
After arriving in Taiwan, Xu focused on writing. How to learn Mandarin Chinese and Chinese literature. One might think that speaking Mandarin, or writing in Chinese, is basic knowledge, and it really doesn't call for someone with his level of expertise or scholarly reputation. But He wrote it himself, based on Taiwan's actual conditions.
This building at 54 Nanhai Road, Zhongzheng District, Taipei, was the institute's original location. In the summer of 1946, the institute was still in its infancy. Drafting manuscripts, writing letters, copying telegrams, and even affixing stamps, Xu handled everything. Letter after letter, personally written by Xu, was sent to the mainland. Two translators, Li Jie and Jin Qionying, and writer Li Helin, came to Taiwan to join in translation and compilation. By 1946, as the repatriation of Japanese captives and civilians neared completion, the return of Japanese scholars was inevitable. However, the Institute's Taiwan Studies Group needed to retain a number of Japanese scholars.
After arriving in Taiwan and beginning his work there, Xu Shouchang argued that Japanese scholarship should be absorbed to support local Taiwan studies.
People of Xu's generation, who studied in Japan, understood Japan but were never pro-Japan. They suffered displacement during the War of Resistance. At the same time, they had received a relatively modern education in Japan and recognized the merits of Japanese education. Xu wanted to translate Japanese language Taiwan research into Chinese and turn it into usable source material. This approach does not conflict with removing Japanization and then restoring Chinese culture.
Early after restoration, Chinese language newspapers quickly emerged, yet papers with higher circulation, such as Taiwan Xin-Xing Daily News and People's Herald, still retained some Japanese language pages to meet readers' needs. This continued for about a year. In October 1946, the Administrative Executive Office issued an announcement that from that day on, all Japanese versions of publications must be removed. Almost at the same time, it was also ordered that Japanese be banned in primary and secondary schools. After 51 years, Japanese was finally removed from classrooms.
Looking back now, I think this was extremely successful. It effectively reversed 50 years of colonial rule and the legacy of the Kominka policy.
On April 19, 1947, in a letter Xu Shouchang wrote to Xu Guangping, Lu Xuan's widow, he said, "Working here is difficult. The greatest obstacle is the language barrier. The people of Taiwan speak Japanese and read Japanese. Their Mandarin and written Chinese are very weak. Although we are making great efforts, the results so far are limited." Less than a month after this letter was sent, the situation changed dramatically. After Chen Yi's removal, on May 16, 1947, the institute was abolished.
Chen Yi wanted to start by revising textbooks, then provide reading materials for Taiwanese children and everyday publications for young people, so that each age group would have suitable content. He hoped to proceed gradually, but political developments did not allow the time for such an approach. When Chen left office, the institute he proposed and founded was subsequently abolished.
After that, Xu Shouchang joined Taiwan University as a professor and the first dean of its Chinese department. Having crossed the sea a year earlier with a vision of cultural reconstruction, Xu never forgot his resolve to promote his close friend Lu Xun. Over the next 2 to 3 years, Lu Xun's works thrilled Taiwan's cultural circles. Xu was one of its most influential advocates.
To resume Taiwan's culture, a new cultural movement was indispensable. Xu Shoucheng believed that after the restoration, what Taiwan needed most was democracy, science, moral practice, and Chinese nationalism. These values could be learned through Lu Xun and through the dissemination of the spirit he embodied.
After stepping down as chair of the Mandarin Promotion Committee, Wei Jiangong also came to Taiwan University to become a teacher. In June 1948, the Ministry of Education of the national government assigned Wei to relocate a Beiping newspaper to Taiwan.
Back in Beiping, there was a paper called Mandarin Tabloid, but no one had anticipated that people in Beiping believed they were born speaking Mandarin, so they had no interest in Mandarin Tabloid. As a result, the paper had almost no readership and drew no attention. When Zhu Jiahua, Minister of Education, visited Taiwan, he saw that Mandarin promotion had made remarkable progress. He was delighted and decided to move Mandarin Tabloid to Taiwan for publication.
On October 25, 1948, the third anniversary of Taiwan's restoration, Mandarin Daily was officially launched. Zhu Jiahua, then Minister of Education, wrote the following words in the inaugural issue. In January this year, I visited Taiwan. From north to south, I traveled through all major cities and mountain regions in Taiwan. In just over 10 days, the most unforgettable and exhilarating impression was encountering people everywhere who spoke excellent Mandarin.
Zhu Jiahua even stopped a child and spoke to him in Mandarin to test him. The child's Mandarin was more standard than that of Minister Zhu Jiahua. The minister was visibly surprised and asked in amazement, "How did you manage to speak so well?" The answer was simple. What they did was nothing but stick to it for all the sweat and put in a lot of hard work and effort.
After founding Mandarin Daily, Wei Jiangong returned to the familiar Peking University. About 5 years later, he led the compilation of the Xinhua Dictionary, influential in the Chinese mainland. In Taiwan, Mandarin Daily became a powerful tool for promoting Mandarin by consistently printing phonetic symbols alongside each Chinese character. Over more than 60 years, it has influenced generations of Taiwanese people. Lin Liang, once a Mandarin promotion officer, later joined Mandarin Daily as a staff member. He worked there for more than 50 years. Through his work in children's literature, he became known as its Taiwanese pioneer, and was affectionately called Grandpa Lin Liang. At number 2 Fuzhou Street, Taipei, the newspaper known as Mandarin Daily has been operating here for 67 years.
Mandarin Daily is actually a very special newspaper. Look at this headline. Let's all plant trees. Phonetic symbols beside each character guide pronunciation.
大的啊大，家家家，来了来来，种之瓮种，树吃物树。
To reconnect a severed culture, to inherit ancestral beliefs. After much hardship, in August 1946, a 15-member team left Taipei for the Chinese mainland. Where were they headed? And what mission did they carry? Please stay tuned for the 6-episode historical documentary, Taiwan, 1945. Episode 6, Shared Ancestry.